So if you have something that is longer, it's going to be more difficult. If you have something that is shorter, it's still better if you have a mixture of upper and lowercase letters and numeric characters as well as symbolic characters.
A couple of points about this. The ABA is about to adopt Rule 1.6D, or excuse me, 1.6C. It's quoted on slide number 21. A lawyer shall make reasonable efforts to prevent the inadvertent or unauthorized disclosure of or unauthorized access to information relating to the representation of a client. And I think anybody in this room would concede that password protecting your data is at least a minimum level of reasonable effort to protect the information. One could argue that it needs to be password protected, and beyond that it should be encrypted as well. And if you think that password protection is particularly good, even strong password protection on all those LinkedIn accounts where they hacked the actual password files and broke the hash coding that was used to encode the passwords on the LinkedIn servers, and then for all the people who not only use the same password for LinkedIn, but for Facebook and for Twitter and for their bank account and everything else, those passwords and usernames are out there in the universe, and they actually are already being used. So if you haven't done it and you have a LinkedIn account, change your password and make sure that you've changed all your other passwords that are the same as the one you had there. Don't take the password and put it someplace where somebody can find it. I can't tell you how many offices we go into where the password is actually in a Post-it note stuck on the corner of the computer display. And I will bet dollars to donuts that if you go into your office, somebody in your office has done just that with a password that accesses your network and your data management system. That person needs to get whacked up alongside the head with a skillet, as my old secretary used to say, and probably on the way out the door. Always expect the unexpected. Apple's iCloud service features Find My iPhone, which will locate your iPhone or iPad if it ever gets lost or stolen. You can use iCloud to remotely wipe the data from your iPad or iPhone to protect sensitive information. There are similar data wiping features available with other devices. If you're using a BlackBerry server-driven BlackBerry system, you can tell the server to wipe your BlackBerry if you ever lose it. And those are important things to know and should affect your choice of portable data devices, whether you're using an i system or an Android system or a BlackBerry system. Encryption, well, there are a couple of things. TrueCrypt is free open source disk encryption software available at truecrypt.org. CipherXLE is a free 448-bit encryption software. NCH Software offers Mayo, which is also a free encryption system. It's important if you're going to use encryption, and I strongly suggest that you do so, that you use something like this that is automatic, real-time, on the fly, and transparent. You can also use something like the Iron Key, which is USB-based encryption, where you have your Iron Key and you plug it into a USB port, and it prevents unauthorized access to the data and ensures compliance with your data security measures.
There are programs to make it easier to remember your passwords. They will store your passwords for you. LastPass is one, 1Password is another. They'll keep track of all of your passwords for you, keep them all in one place. It's a great idea. Just be real careful not to lose your password to one of these, because then they get everything. Skype has been around for a while now. It is incredibly useful. It's a very, very low price ability to make telephone and conference calls basically all over the world. They've got free versions which let you make one-to-one calls You have to get one of the paid versions in order to get conference calling features, but you can use your computer or your cell phone or your iPad out in the field and create a video conference almost anywhere.
And it really is inexpensive. I mean, you can do computer to computer is free, including video conferencing, video calling, computer to computer. Computer to telephone is 2.5 cents a minute to, like, Germany. I think the most expensive place to call using Skype is India, and it's like 12.5 cents a minute. Secure cloud-based management. We hear a lot about the cloud and where the cloud is going and what the cloud is all about. I think the first thing we need to do is come to a generalized understanding of what the cloud is. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, has come up with a definition. It's described on the screen. I won't bore you with the detail, but the idea basically is that it is a model for providing on-demand network access to a shared pool of information. It's not such a big deal. At its annual symposium last October in Orlando, IT Expo, Gartner unveiled its list of the 10 most strategic tech trends for 2012. According to David Clearly, a well-recognized Gartner analyst, we could see the failure of the cloud to live up to hype, the luster could wear off, and he dropped the cloud from number 1 on the list for 2011 to number 10 for 2012. And aside from hype, he also noted that it's partially because the cloud is getting absorbed into lots of other operational IT areas where we're really ultimately looking at some sort of ubiquitous, all-present computing ability.
The world is changing dramatically. It used to be that setting up a server and creating your own space on the cloud was something that only the techies could deal with. Now it's basically plug and play. You have a choice when it comes to dealing with the cloud. You can use somebody else's service or you can have your own. There is a software called Pogo Plug, which is available to you at very low cost. I think it's under $30. The Pogo people also have their own hardware, or Buffalo has come up with a cloud store device, which is the hardware piece, and it uses the Pogo Plug technology. I happen to like the cloud store. It's what I use for my own setup. But you basically set up your own server by plugging it in effectively to the internet, and once it's there, you can access it and you can transfer information to and from it, and you have complete control over it. It's not going to 63 foreign countries. It's not being stored in some place where God knows who may have access to it, and you have complete control over what's going on with it. That's to be distinguished from some of these situations where you're using shared facilities where you have your information on somebody else's server and they have access to it, even though you think they don't.
Like, for example, Google. Read the Google privacy policy, which loosely translated across many pages of documentation is you ain't got no privacy.
Or Dropbox, which was actually something I still use, but I don't use it for client information anymore because they changed their terms of service so that instead of being able to protect it, they don't want you having anything on their server that they don't have the encryption key for, and they say they have the right to access any information on their server, and the reason that they give you for that is so that they can help you and provide better service to you. Well, from my perspective, making that available to them if it's client confidential information violates ethical obligations that we have as attorneys. And as soon as I read that, I sent them a very nasty letter and took all my client information off Dropbox, and I don't store client information on it anymore. And I recommend that you don't either.
Actually, my recommendation is that you store no client information on any server that you do not control exclusively, you or your firm. That said, you can use some of these services which were really designed as file sharing services to circumvent the size limitation on email. I'll give you an example. This slideshow is about 29 megabytes. There's no way I could ship it back and forth to Jeff to review using email. So we use You Send It to ship it back and forth to each other, because you upload it, he downloads it, everybody's happy. Make sure that you put a short fuse on it when you do that, and that once it's downloaded that you clear it. Again, shifting gears. Acrobat. Byline, work better together from anywhere with online services from Adobe. Acrobat allows you to pay an annual subscription, store PDF and Word documents securely, create cabinets open to different groups. It is an unbeatable way to store electronic document production. Adobe has a Send Now feature that allows you to send and track files, including really large files like audio and video files. There's Form Central, which is an online service allowing you to create, distribute, and analyze forms and surveys. Again, do you really want to put client information up there? And our recommendation is you shouldn't. You're much better off using your own cloud server in that kind of a situation. It may be inconvenient, but at least you should be satisfied that the data is secure, at least in terms of anybody else physically accessing the data on the server.
But on the other hand, if you're doing a collaborative creation of a contract, using acrobat.com works very well. All right, if you have not tried, oops, went the wrong way. If you have not tried brainstorming and organizing your notes using mind maps, you ought to. It's a graphic way of working through issues and outlining things and developing cases and developing arguments. For some people, it works really, really well. If you're a visual type person, if you're a graphic type person, then you'll find that this is much better for you and much easier for you than using the traditional outline form. There's lots of different programs that you can get to do it on the computer. You can also do it on things like the iPad. iThoughts HD is actually one of the better iPad programs for doing mind mapping. I want to shift gears one more time. I talked about using the excuse me, the iPad in court. One of the things that I've started doing with the iPad and with my computer is creating electronic trial notebooks. Rather than doing it in hard copies of paper and binders, I do it electronically. It's much easier to work with. There are two programs that are far and away the best that I have found. One works on Windows, which is Microsoft's OneNote, which is part of the newer versions of the Office suite. There is also an exclusively online version which you can access if you are on Windows or on the Mac platform. I don't like that as much as the one that lives in your computer, but it is available and does work with the Mac as well. The other program that is shown on the other side of the OneNote logo is a program called Circus Ponies Notebook. Despite the name, which is perhaps not the best choice of names for a business product, it is absolutely, bar none, the best piece of software I have ever found for creating a trial notebook or doing any kind of scrapbooking or scrapbook outline structure electronically. There is a version that works on the Mac, and there is a version that works on the iPad, and those of you that are still using Windows, you don't get to use it until you get a Mac because it doesn't have a Windows version.
Show of hands, how many of you use LiveNote for depositions? How many of you have heard of LiveNote? Okay, how many of you take depositions? Okay, a lot of transactional lawyers in this group. LiveNote has actually been around for a while. It started out as a simple thing. It allows for instantaneous display of the court reporter's stenographic notes in transcript form. Depending on how good the reporter is, it can be very clean or it can be very rough. but it allows you to sit in a deposition, have it displayed on your notebook computer concurrently with it's being displayed on the court reporter's computer. And it has now progressed to the point where, utilizing the internet, it will display on your colleague's computer back at the office, on your co-counsel's computer in Arkansas, on your client's computer in Amsterdam. You get the general idea. It's very powerful, and it's a real convenience.
Next tip, get a handwriting font. Hello. There we go. There is a program called a company called vletter.com, and their URL is www.vletter.com. They will take your actual script and or printing, and they will build a font based on it. What you see on the bottom right-hand corner there is my signature created with a V-letter font that I had built for myself, and it looks just like the real thing. I, in fact, have signed pleadings with that. I have signed letters with that. I have signed contracts with that, and I've never had anybody balk at it. The one thing I do when I send it out that way, though, is I change the color to blue, because for some reason, if it's in blue, everybody thinks it's a real signature, and if it's in black, they think it's a copy. So I recommend that you do that. If you don't want to invest in the font, there's another way that you can accomplish the same thing. You can create an inexpensive signature using a scanner. When you get your copy of the slide deck, the instructions are here. I'm not going to go over them with you now. Just simply read them and follow them, and you'll be able to do that. When you do that, you can actually also create a digital signature inside of Adobe Acrobat.
Now, you can actually do two things. You can either create a signature stamp, which is just like any one of the Adobe stamps, like confidential or draft or whatever, and it's simply a stamp like of your signature that you can stamp onto the signature block. Or you can do a full digital signature, which is an authentication that comes with it that also authenticates the document itself, and it will show a little emblem above and to the left of the graphic signature that shows the status of the document, whether the document has been changed in any way since you applied the signature. So it's kind of important if you're doing it, for example, on pleadings, that you wait until you've assembled the entire document before you apply the signature.
Which actually segues into our next tip, which is that you should be using Adobe Acrobat. How many of you have Adobe Acrobat on your computer? Okay, that's not bad. Not good enough, but not bad. I, for the last 5 years, taken the position that there should not be any computer in any law office in the land that does not have Adobe Acrobat Professional on it. It is one of the most useful programs that you can find. It's available on both Mac and Windows. Be sure if you get it that you get the Acrobat Professional as opposed to the Acrobat Standard. If you're a Mac person, you have no option. They only make it an Acrobat Professional. They figured nobody who was smart enough to buy a Mac would ever buy Acrobat Standard. I'm just kidding. If you're on Windows, you have to make a choice of whether you get Acrobat Standard or Professional. If you get Acrobat Standard, you don't get a lot of extra features that were put in specifically to help attorneys, such as bait stamping or true redaction, which are available to you in Acrobat Professional. It is an absolutely excellent program, and I can't recommend it strongly enough.
And just the fact that you can bait stamp a pile of digitized documents in connection with the document production, or sequentially paginate using the bait stamping feature a brief with all of the attached affidavits or declarations, depending on which way you go, and the attached exhibits, so that you have one sequentially paged document by just simply invoking it and running it on the PDF file, saves an amazing amount of time. Meeting scheduling tools, Jeff?
Yeah, if you've got a situation where you've got a number of people and you're trying to schedule a meeting, instead of making a bunch of phone calls or having your secretary make a bunch of phone calls to do that, you can use one of these online tools to set up a meeting and find a time that everybody is available. The list of some of the ones that we recommend, along with the URLs, will be in the slide deck. Consider using it and saving yourself some time.
The best one of them is Doodle. It just works better. Web conferencing, we already talked about using Skype as a vehicle to do web conferencing. There are other, if you will, professional web conferencing applications that are available, ranging from Adobe Connect, which is generally recognized as the best of breed, to the GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, GoToTraining applications that Citrix now runs. Avaya, which is a telecommunications company, started out making VoIP telephony systems. They've now branched out into web conferencing, and they have both Avaya Live Engage and Avaya Live Connect in beta form. Connect probably is the most complete vision of what web conferencing ought to be, although it isn't as good as Adobe Connect. And Cisco has developed, Cisco bought WebEx, and then it's developed its own system called Jabber. The general sense is that their applications maintain a consistent experience across devices, which can be useful. So that if you're doing conferencing on computer platforms, PC or Mac as it may be, an iPhone, an iPad, Android systems, Nokia systems, BlackBerry systems, you get the same experience no matter what the device may be. Email. We all use it. Some of us hate it. Some observations. Stay away from public or free email for professional communications with courts and clients. It's insecure, and it gives you a poor image. It's like you're your kids or grandkids using Hotmail or Yahoo for your email. Get your own domain. Network Solutions is running a sale right now. Go to Network Solutions and you can get your own domain for $15. Any registrar, such as Network Solutions, will host secure email on its servers using your domain. For as many users as you have or want in your office, it's a pricing function. The good thing is that it's at least secure, and you're satisfied that the company is sound enough that it's going to be around essentially forever, or at least for as long as your law office is going to be around. Also, use a real email client instead of doing email in your browser and leaving the email out there on the system. It's the same issue again. Get it out of the cloud system and onto your hardware that you control so that you can take responsibility for it. Those applications are anything from Outlook's email application, which is actually not the best application out there, Thunderbird, which is the companion to Firefox, or Eudora. Thunderbird actually acquired the rights to Eudora. Eudora has developed now an open source version of Eudora. Eudora is the oldest standalone email client in the market. It is free. It always has been. It is probably the most powerful email application out there. I commend it to you highly, unless you are absolutely wedded forever to using Microsoft Office. Next, keep your inbox clean, whether it is your snail mail inbox or your email inbox. Make use of files and folders in each of those email applications and invoke filtering to sort your incoming mail into those mailboxes as it comes in. So as your email is downloading, it's automatically getting filed in the relevant things based on the sorting criteria that you establish. I use Eudora. I can sort on as many as 5 different criteria, and it makes it very efficient. Remember the trash principle. Transfer it either to somebody else or to trash. Review it, act on it, or file it. It applies to email as much as it applies to any other piece of paper that hits your desk. And one tip that will actually make you a saner person: speedy arrival does not require speedy response. You control your mail, you control your response, not the reverse. And it applies to whether it comes in by fax, or it comes in by email, or it comes in by messenger. Just the mere fact that it got there quickly doesn't mean that you have to respond instantaneously to every piece of it. One piece may require that, but not necessarily everything. There are some Outlook helpers that assist you in avoiding the oops situation where you send the email and forget to hang the attachment on it. When you have the message that says, herewith please find a copy of the brief we just filed, and there's no brief, and the client writes you back and asks, where is it? There's a Microsoft Office Labs application called Forgotten Attachment Detector that actually parses your message looking for a reference to an attachment, and if it doesn't see it actually attached, it pops up a reminder to you. Outlook has an attachment reminder suite written by Codeplex that does the same thing.
All right, next tip is to go paperless. How many of you have started using paperless files, electronic files? All of you should be doing it. It is so much easier to carry a laptop that weighs less than 3 pounds with all of your files on it than to carry file cabinets of information. I've got all of my active files on this laptop. I've got all of my client data on this laptop. It's all encrypted, but I can work anywhere with the same efficiency that I can in my office because I've got everything with me. It's not that, well, gee, I got somewhere and I don't have my file with me. What do I do?